Good evening and welcome to News Review. The Ministry of Defence has issued a strong note of caution to the Development and Planning Commission over the government's intention to reclaim land for sporting facilities off Western Beach. The MOD, which failed to submit its concerns in writing ahead of yesterday's meeting, has said the development could have an impact on water drainage from the airfield and affect security over a liquid oxygen storage facility in the area. The Commission also considered the reclamation project for the new power station and granted outline planning permission for the Midtown project.
An environmental impact assessment has already been carried out on the Western Beach reclamation project, which points out that the water quality could deteriorate further with this development. A storm drain in La Linea overflows with pollution every time it rains, and the reclamation could increase the amount of time the pollution takes to dissipate. However, the assessment confirmed that the project didn't raise any transboundary issues. Minister John Cortes, who sits on the DPC, pointed out that the former GSD administration had already approved reclamation in this area for a larger project involving industry and a yacht repair facility. The environmental safety group expressed grave concerns about the permanent and temporary effects on marine life, water quality, the loss of a large body of water, the bottleneck of traffic, and water quality. Minister Stephen Linares, acting for the Deputy Chief Minister on the DPC, said all aspects needed to be balanced out against an urgent need for more sporting facilities. He said the exact use for the site had not yet been determined, and a research project was already underway to determine what the Sports and Leisure Authority's needs were. A spokesman for the MOD issued a strong note of caution for the developments. Although the MOD had failed to submit written notice in time, the spokesman spoke at the meeting and said there were several security issues which needed to be taken into account, namely the drainage of surface water on the airfield, which could be affected by the development. He also pointed out the existence of a liquid oxygen storage facility which needed to be 50 meters away from public areas. A spokesman said an aeronautical study, which had already been commissioned, would be very helpful. Dr. Cortes said the government would be taking all views into account, but added that the MOD would have to change its own way of working to allow Gibraltar to move forward. The government is also considering representations made in respect of the reclamation project for the new power station at the North Mole. The town planner, Paul Origo, has advised the government to supply a traffic management plan to control vehicle access to the area, particularly when large cruise liners call into port. He also recommended a survey of the seabed to make sure there aren't important archaeological artifacts there. The ESG recommended site contacts be made available to residents of the area, who will be affected by noise and pollution during construction. Finally, outline planning permission has been granted for the Midtown project. The Commission has made several recommendations to the architects to improve the facade of the buildings so they provide more variation and colour to the area. A full application will be considered at a later stage.
Meanwhile, Christine Vasquez asked the Chief Minister whether the MOD's public objection had come as a surprise to the government. Fabian Picardo is back on the rock following meetings in London with top Foreign Office officials.
Not at all. As you know, this is not a government project of the GSLP Liberals. This is a government project that originates under the GSD. Even then, there were issues that the Ministry of Defence was raising at the time. A number of them had been dealt with. In fact, most of them had been dealt with. There may be new issues now. But we've always known that the MOD have an interest in this particular reclamation because it is adjacent to an MOD asset, namely the runway, and that they have concerns, legitimate concerns, about how the reclamation is carried out, so the mechanics of the reclamation, and then what happens on the reclamation afterwards. So none of this was a surprise to the government. I have a very fluid relationship with the Ministry of Defence. I was aware of what their concerns were. Of course, it's important that the government take these projects to the DPC. That was our policy. So previously, the Western Beach reclamation did not go to the DPC. Our policy is to take to the DPC such projects for guidance and advice, and there the public can observe what the issues are, not just with other individuals who may wish to bring an objection to the DPC, but other stakeholders that have representation on the DPC that have issues to put. It may be the Ministry of Defence, or it may be the Heritage Trust in another field, or the ESG, who we included in the board of the DPC, who might have something to say about a particular project.
Well, Chief Minister, you've literally just got off a plane from London where you've been meeting with Foreign Office officials. Tell me about those meetings.
Well, they were routine meetings. I make sure that I have very regular meetings with senior officials in the Foreign Office that deal with Gibraltar. It's important that we keep all issues on the Gibraltar agenda at the top of the minds of those who we are dealing with in London. We ensure that we're on the same page on those issues, that work continues on those issues, and that they don't in any way fall away from people's radar.
Well, Chief Minister, last week we had a day of very long queues, and we also had a Guardia Civil vessel cross the path of a British submarine as it was entering the base. Were these issues discussed?
Indeed, of course, as you might expect, incursions, frontier queues, and the whole gamut of issues that are relevant to us in Gibraltar were the issues that I was discussing with colleagues in the United Kingdom.
And can we expect announcements from any of these meetings?
Well, when you see the announcements come out, you will see that there was discussion and that it's led to the announcement. It would be wrong for me to suggest that there's going to be announcements on particular issues until we are ready to make particular statements, and the government will make those statements when we're ready.
And following Thursday's GBC session, Jonathan Sacramento spoke to Sports Minister Stephen Linares and asked him to elaborate on what sporting facilities would be offered at the new reclaimed area, which will take 5 years to build.
Well, this reclamation area is a general sporting facility, and therefore we still don't know exactly what facilities we need. We know we need a cricket pitch, we know we need a rugby pitch. How we do that, it's still in the planning stage. What we're doing is a research as well within the GSLA to see the demand of sports. Therefore, if, for example, there is a lot of demand on paddle tennis, we'll probably have to do a paddle tennis court. If there isn't a demand on paddle tennis, we don't do it. But there is a study, an ongoing study, as to what facilities we need there.
But you do know that there is an increase in demand for sporting facilities because of pressures on the GSLA to provide these.
Of course. I mean, look at the explosion of sporting, people doing sports. People in Gibraltar wants more sports. And we have, what I say, is a positive problem. The participation level of people in sports here is very high, and therefore the GSLA cannot cope. There is a lot of facilities, but we need more. The people in Gibraltar demand that. They always want more allocations for their training, whether it be football, basketball. We are doing more events in sporting facilities as well, which impacts in leagues and all that. So this is why we're doing this sporting facility.
But you said quite clearly at the DPC meeting that the Victoria Stadium will not be upgraded to a UEFA Category 3 stadium.
No, it is not a Category 3. We cannot reach a Category 3. What we have done is worked very closely with UEFA. We have worked very closely with the GFA in order to upgrade the Victoria Stadium in order for other events like under-19s, under-17s, which is not fit for purpose now. So what we do is we upgrade it to a category, want of a better way to say it, a category 2.8, which UEFA is happy with in order to have certain tournaments and certain matches played there. And that would upgrade the facility of the Victoria Stadium, but it does not need an upgrade where we do not need a stadium for the international matches.
Plenty of concerns put forward by the ESG and by the MOD. Will you be taking these into account?
We always do. The DPC, I'm not a constant or full member, or should I say, I'm not a consistent member. I'm just acting for Dr. Garcia in this.
The government?
Yes, the government always takes all these things seriously. The DPC being public is an example of how we deal with things. We do not. This project was approved under closed doors by the previous administration. So let's get it right. Now we are bringing it to the table again, being open, transparent, as it should. And people can comment and have their views, and that's what they do here.
A developer based in the United Arab Emirates has put forward a mixed-use proposal for the Eastside reclamation area. The Amaja Group says the project would include a luxury hotel, residential and commercial complexes, and a FIFA-approved football pitch. The plans also include medical and educational amenities, recreational spaces, pools and beaches. Initial designs were submitted by Fender Katsalidis Architects in 2007, and the Amaja Group says that if successful, it would approach Fender with a view to restarting the project. It adds that it supports the concept of opening up a tunnel connecting the east side with the centre of town, which is one of the key elements of another proposal for the area by an Australian magnate revealed earlier this month. And the government has confirmed it's received 17 expressions of interest for the Eastside project. They're currently being considered by the Deputy Chief Minister, Dr. Joseph Garcia, and the government's Lands Committee. They will then make recommendations to the rest of the cabinet as to how to proceed. Christine Vasquez asked Mr. Bigardo what the government meant when it described it as a holistic project.
Well, look, I think it's clear that that sort of plot needs to include high-end residential accommodation, and that's probably going to be the core of what happens there. The value of the land there is important, and therefore ensuring that the Gibraltar taxpayer makes the most out of that land means going for the premium value, and that will mean high-end residential. I think it will likely also mean some hotel use, very likely a marina of some sorts going out from the existing reclaimed area. And one of my particular government's views is that it should include some element perhaps of affordable housing on the fringes of the plot to bring real life to the area.
Well, this latest project comes with an UEFA-approved stadium. That must be a good selling point for the government.
Well, one particular proposal appears to include a FIFA-style stadium. Another one appears to include a monorail cutting across the rock. These proposers have decided that they wish to make their proposals public at the same time as they have put them to the government. I think it's fine that they should, but that won't influence what it is that the government decides we should choose as the best option for Gibraltar and for the taxpayer. So, I mean, there's a lot for us to consider in respect of the expressions of interest that will have been received as a criteria that Jose Garcia and his Lands Committee will usually be going through in terms of premium values, etc. And all of that will be important in determining what we choose in order to take the next steps for the people of Gibraltar in respect of that particular asset, which is the East Side reclamation.
And in the meantime, does work continue on the site?
The sort of work that you're seeing on the site is infrastructural work. It's a temporary siting of other facilities that need to move as we develop other sites. So, for example, Coaling Island has been prepared to provide car parking for the year whilst the government's new car park in the area of the Midtown development, the old Naval Ground, is going to be finished. So in order to allow an element of parking in the town area, Coaling Island is being cleared. People who were at Coaling Island are being moved temporarily to the East Side reclamation. So you're seeing that sort of moves on the checkerboard, which is essentially one of the biggest problems, and anybody who's been involved at a technical level in running Gibraltar will tell you, is the big issue in Gibraltar, where to put things, and in particular where to put things temporarily as you move things around the chessboard.
We'll be back with more of this week's news after the break.